My first day of ninth grade was a total disaster. I mean, everyone expects high school to be a bit weird. New faces, new classes, new chances to embarrass yourself. But this was next level weird, you know? It started the moment I stepped off the bus, bright and early. Or maybe not so bright, I was still half asleep. Kids were looking at me funny, really funny. Not just a quick glance, but full-on stares, like I had forgotten to wear pants. I checked. I was definitely wearing pants. Thank goodness for small mercies. Still, the stares continued, following me like I was some kind of alien. I tried to just ignore it, head down, march to my locker. Maybe I had a giant zit on my nose? I did a quick check in my tiny locker mirror. Nope, nose was clear. Maybe my hair was sticking up in a weird way. I tried to pat it down, but that just made me look even more awkward, I think. The feeling of all those eyes on me was intense. It was like being under a spotlight, but I hadn't even done anything yet. I just wanted to find a quiet corner and disappear. Or maybe just turn around and go straight back home, pull the covers over my head. Throughout the morning, it didn't stop. In every class, kids would whisper when I walked in. Some would point, then quickly look away when I caught them. It was super uncomfortable. I started to wonder if there was some big prank being played on me. Was I on a hidden camera show or something? That would almost make sense, but nobody was laughing out loud, just whispering and staring. I tried to act normal, focus on the teachers, but it was hard. My palms were sweating, and I probably looked as guilty as if I'd actually done something wrong. Lunchtime was the worst. I sat alone, of course. Who would want to sit with the freak show everyone was staring at? I poked at my mystery meat sandwich, trying to make myself as small as possible. A group of older kids walked past my table, and one of them actually tripped, supposedly by accident, right near me. He then looked at me and said, "Watch it, superstar." Superstar? What was that supposed to mean? I was so confused. This first day was turning into a nightmare, and I had no idea why. I just wanted it to be over. The autograph request started after lunch during study hall. I was trying to look busy reading my history textbook, pretending to be super interested in ancient civilizations, you know. Suddenly, this girl from my English class, Sarah, came up to my desk. She was holding a little notebook and a pen, looking nervous. Excuse me, she mumbled. Can I have your autograph? I blinked. Autograph? Was she serious? I must have looked as confused as I felt, because my brain totally short-circuited for a second. I almost asked if she had mistaken me for someone else. My autograph? I finally managed to stammer out. Why would you want my autograph? I genuinely had no clue. Was this part of the prank? Sarah just giggled, a weird, high-pitched sound. Then she snatched her notebook back, her face turning bright red. "Oh, never mind," she squeaked. And then she and her friend who was lurking nearby ran off, laughing like crazy. I just sat there, completely baffled. What was so funny? And why on earth would anyone want my signature? I wasn't a celebrity. I was just me, a regular, confused ninth grader. But it didn't stop with Sarah. A few minutes later, a couple of guys came over. They were trying to act all cool, but I could see them smirking. "Hey man, can we get your autograph?" one of them asked. He even pushed a crumpled piece of paper and a leaky pen towards me. Again, I asked, "Why?" And again, they just laughed, grabbed their stuff, and hurried away, elbowing each other. It was like I was in on some joke that everyone knew except me. It was frustrating and honestly a little bit scary. I felt like I was losing my mind. By the end of the school day, at least 5 different people had asked for my autograph. Each time they would laugh and run away when I questioned them. I started to feel a weird mix of dread and curiosity. What was going on? Was I famous for something I didn't know about? Did I accidentally do something incredibly heroic or incredibly stupid that everyone saw? I racked my brain, but nothing came to mind. My life was pretty boring usually. This whole day was the opposite of boring. It was just plain bizarre. The final bell couldn't come soon enough for me. Walking home from the bus stop, I hoped things would go back to normal. School was weird, but home was home. Home was my safe place usually, but nope. The weirdness followed me. Mrs. Henderson from next door was watering her roses. When she saw me, she dropped her watering can. Then she quickly picked it up and hurried inside, but not before snapping a quick photo with her phone. A photo of me walking home? This was getting crazier by the minute. My own neighbor was acting like I was some kind of rare animal escaped from the zoo. When I got to my front porch, there were 2 little kids I didn't recognize. They were sitting on my steps, holding pieces of paper. "Are you him?" one of them asked, his eyes wide. "Him who?" I asked, already tired of the mystery. "The guy. Can we have your autograph? They both chirped. I sighed. More autograph requests. Even here, at my own house. I didn't even know these kids. How did they know where I lived? I mumbled something like, I don't know what you're talking about, and squeezed past them to get to my front door. Inside, even my own family was acting a bit strange. My mom gave me this weird, searching look. My dad kept clearing his throat like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Even my little sister, who usually just ignored me, was staring. What? I finally exploded. Why is everyone acting so weird today? What did I miss? My mom just shook her head. We're not sure, honey, she said, her voice a little shaky. People have been calling the house, asking strange questions. Some even asked if you'd sign something for them. It's all very peculiar. Later that evening, my parents sat me down. They looked worried. Did anything unusual happen today, son? Dad asked. I told them about the stares, the whispers, and the autograph hunters at school. They exchanged a look. It was clear they were just as confused as I was. Maybe even more so because they were supposed to have answers. We spent the rest of the evening trying to figure it out, but we came up with nothing. Zero, zilch. I went to bed that night feeling like the main character in a very strange, very unfunny TV show, and I really wanted to change the channel. The next morning, things went from weird to seriously alarming. When I got to school, there were police cars parked out front, lights flashing, officers standing around. My heart did a little jump into my throat. What was going on now? Kids were all huddled in groups, whispering even more frantically than yesterday. The atmosphere was tense. You could practically taste the fear and excitement in the air. I tried to act casual, like I wasn't completely freaking out inside. But let's be honest, I was. Police cars at school usually mean bad news, really bad news. Our principal, Mr. Thompson, made an announcement over the loudspeaker. His voice was all serious and crackly. He said there had been some incidents in the neighborhood overnight, some minor vandalism, a few things stolen from a local store. He asked anyone with information to come forward. I didn't think much of it, not in relation to me anyway. I mean, what did that have to do with everyone staring at me? I was just trying to survive ninth grade, not solve crimes. Or so I thought, at least. Then, during third period, I got called to the principal's office. That's never a good sign. My stomach did a flip. When I walked in, there were 2 police officers sitting there with Mr. Thompson. They all looked at me with very serious expressions. Son, one of the officers began, we need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts last night. My whereabouts? I was at home, in bed, asleep. Or at least I thought I was. I told them that, my voice probably shaking a little bit. I was just a kid. What could they possibly want with me? And then they dropped the bombshell. They had security footage from the store that was robbed, and from a couple of houses that were vandalized, and the person in the videos looked exactly like me, doing all those things. But I was asleep. How could that be? That's when they told me. The store owner had seen me, sort of. He said I was moving strangely, like I wasn't really awake. The police suspected I might have been sleepwalking, and that's when the nickname started, the blind criminal, because I committed crimes without even seeing what I was doing. It was the most shocking news of my life. Fast forward 10 years. Man, time flies when you're trying not to be a sleepwalking menace to society. Those early days after the big reveal were a blur. Doctors, tests, more doctors. They confirmed it. I was a serious sleepwalker, and apparently my sleepwalking self had a bit of a mischievous streak, or maybe a criminal one, depending on how you looked at it. The first few incidents were minor, thankfully. Some spray painting, borrowing garden gnomes, that kind of thing, because I was a minor. And because it was clearly a medical issue, I avoided any real jail time back then. They called it a mistake of youth, compounded by a rare condition. But the label stuck. The blind criminal. That's what some kids at school called me, even after the initial shock wore off. It wasn't exactly a compliment, you know. It made high school even more awkward than it already was. Dates? Forget about it. Who wants to go out with a guy who might rob their parents' house in his sleep? I tried everything to stop it. Special alarms, locking my bedroom door, even tying myself to the bed once. That last one didn't end well. I just ended up tangled and more tired the next day. Life went on, though. I finished high school somehow. I even tried college for a bit, but the stress seemed to make the sleepwalking worse. Imagine waking up in the campus library, surrounded by books you reshelved into the fiction section, all by genre, but completely wrong genres. It was embarrassing, to say the least. My parents were supportive, bless them. They installed extra locks and alarms at home. We tried different medications, therapies, even some weird herbal remedies my aunt suggested. Nothing seemed to completely cure it. The sleepwalking episodes became less frequent for a while, but they never fully disappeared. I learned to live with a certain level of anxiety. Every morning I'd wake up with a sense of dread. What did I do last night? Did I stay in bed? Or did my nighttime alter ego go on another adventure? It was like having a secret, unpredictable roommate living inside my head, a roommate who had terrible judgment and a knack for getting me into trouble. I just wanted a normal life, but normal seemed like a distant dream, a very, very distant dream that I probably couldn't reach, even if I sleepwalked all the way there. It was a heavy burden to carry around every single day. As I got older, into my early 20s, the sleepwalking didn't just continue, it escalated. The minor incidents started to become not so minor. It wasn't just garden gnomes anymore. My sleepwalking self developed more expensive tastes, or maybe just got bolder. I started breaking into houses. Not for kicks, not consciously anyway. I'd wake up back in my own bed with no memory of it, but then the news would report a local break-in. Sometimes I'd find strange items in my apartment. A fancy watch, a weird statue, once even a small yappy dog that thankfully I managed to return before anyone noticed. The police knew about my condition, of course. For a while they were somewhat understanding, especially when the things I stole were bizarre or seemingly random and often found discarded nearby. But as the frequency and seriousness of the break-ins increased, their patience wore thin. And who could blame them? It's hard to explain to someone that you robbed their house, but, you were asleep, so it doesn't really count. Try telling that to the person whose sense of security is now shattered. It doesn't go over well. Trust me on this one. I became a local legend, and not in a good way. The blind criminal strikes again. The cheesy local news headlines would sometimes scream. I was terrified of going to sleep. I tried staying up for days, drinking gallons of coffee, but eventually exhaustion would win. And then I'd be at the mercy of whatever my sleeping brain decided to do. It was a living nightmare. My waking hours were filled with anxiety and guilt over things I didn't consciously do, but was still responsible for. I felt like a monster, a broken machine that couldn't be fixed properly. The worst part was the helplessness. I was trying, I really was. I saw specialists, participated in sleep studies, anything that might offer a glimmer of hope. Some things seemed to help for a little while, reducing the episodes, but then, out of nowhere, I'd have a bad night. And another family would wake up to find their home invaded by a sleepwalking thief. I was becoming a wanted man, not for who I was when I was awake, but for the actions of a part of me I couldn't control. It was a terrifying and lonely existence, believe me. I'd gotten married during a relatively quiet period of my sleepwalking. Sarah, my wife, was amazing. She knew all about my condition before we got married. She was understanding, supportive, and incredibly brave. We had 2 beautiful kids, a boy and a girl. For a while, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could have that normal life I craved. We took all the precautions we could. Heavy-duty locks, alarms on our bedroom door, everything. Sarah would even sometimes gently guide me back to bed if she found me wandering. She was my rock. But as the crimes got more serious, the strain on our family became unbearable. It wasn't just the fear of what I might do during the night. It was the police visits, the whispers from neighbors, the looks people gave our kids at school. Sarah tried to shield them and me as much as possible, but it was a heavy burden for her to carry. She was scared. Scared for our safety, scared for our future, scared of me, or at least the part of me that came out at night. I could see the toll it was taking on her. Her smiles became rarer, her eyes often filled with worry. The breaking point came after a particularly bad incident. I had sleepwalked several blocks away and broken into a jewelry store. It was a major news story. The police were no longer just keeping an eye on me. I was a serious suspect in a felony. Sarah sat me down, her eyes full of tears. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I love you, but I have to protect the kids. They're scared. I'm scared." My heart shattered into a million pieces. I understood. How could I not? But it didn't make it any less painful. She left a week later, taking the kids to live with her parents in another state. The house felt so empty, so quiet. The silence was deafening. All the joy seemed to have been sucked out of my life. I didn't blame her. In her shoes, I probably would have done the same thing, but the pain of losing my family on top of everything else was almost too much to bear. I was truly alone now, with just my nighttime demon for company. It was the lowest point of my entire life, and I didn't see any way out. It wasn't long after Sarah and the kids left that the inevitable happened. The police finally had enough evidence from the jewelry store heist, despite my sleepwalking defense. I was arrested. Standing in court hearing the charges, it felt surreal, like I was watching a movie about someone else's terrible life. My lawyer tried his best, arguing about my condition, diminished responsibility, all that legal stuff. But the evidence was strong, and the public was scared. The judge sentenced me to prison, jail, the place I had feared for so long. Prison was exactly as awful as you'd imagine, maybe worse. I was surrounded by actual conscious criminals, guys who chose to do bad things. And there I was, the blind criminal, the guy who robbed places in his pajamas without knowing it. It wasn't exactly a badge of honor in there. I kept to myself mostly, just trying to survive each day. The guilt and loneliness were constant companions. I missed my kids so much it felt like a physical ache. I thought this was it. My life was over. I'd be known forever as the sleepwalking disaster. Then, one visiting day, a name was called that I didn't expect. Mark Bulldog Benson, my old high school bully. The guy who used to make my life miserable, long before my sleepwalking made it even more miserable. What on earth did he want? I was hesitant, but I went to the visitors area, and there he was, looking a bit older, a bit rougher around the edges, but unmistakably Bulldog. He wasn't smirking or trying to intimidate me. He just looked serious, and then he said something that floored me. "I always knew you weren't faking it," he said. He told me he'd seen me one night back in high school, wandering around the neighborhood in a daze, eyes glazed over, trying to fix a leaning mailbox with a garden hose. He said he never told anyone because, well, he was Bulldog, and it was funnier to just watch. But he said he knew I wasn't a bad guy, just a guy with a really weird problem. He started visiting regularly. He talked to my lawyer. He even started a small local campaign telling people my story, the story. My old bully, of all people, became my staunchest defender. It was the most unexpected twist in my already twisted life. Bulldog's support actually made a difference. He wasn't a lawyer, but he was persistent. He got some local media to look at my case again, to focus on the medical aspect rather than just the blind criminal headlines. My lawyer, encouraged by this new attention and some funds Bulldog helped raise for a better sleep specialist, filed for a review of my case. New medical evidence came to light, a more advanced understanding of my specific type of parasomnia. It was a long shot, but after what felt like an eternity, the court agreed to a reevaluation. It wasn't an instant get-out-of-jail-free card, but it was hope. Eventually, with new treatment plans and a clearer picture of my condition, I was released. Not scot-free, there were conditions, probation, ongoing therapy, but I was out. The world felt overwhelmingly bright and loud after so long inside. Bulldog was there when I walked out. He just clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Told ya." It was a strange feeling being grateful to someone who used to stuff me into lockers. Life is weird like that, I guess. He helped me get a small apartment and a simple job. The most important thing was that the new treatment started to work, really work. A combination of medication, strict sleep hygiene, and cognitive behavioral therapy finally gave me some control. The sleepwalking episodes became incredibly rare, then stopped altogether. It was like a miracle. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I reconnected with my kids, though it was a slow process. Sarah and I remained friends, but we both knew our romantic chapter was closed. And then I met someone new. Her name is Emily. She's a librarian, and she loves my story. She says it's like a real-life strange fiction novel. Today, as I write this on May 21st, 2025, I can honestly say I'm happy. Genuinely happy. I still have to be careful, of course. My sleep routine is sacred, but I'm no longer afraid of the night. I have a loving partner, a decent job, and my kids are back in my life. The blind criminal is a thing of the past, a weird chapter in a book I'm still writing. Sometimes I even see Bulldog for a coffee. We don't talk about the old days much, we just talk about regular stuff, and that after everything feels pretty amazing. Normal is good.